In 1933, a farmer in Nebraska buried $400 in mason jars beneath his hog pen 3 nights before the bank in town locked its doors forever. He never told his wife exactly where. When he died in 1961, his sons dug up half an acre and found only 2 of the 6 jars. The rest are still down there. Our grandparents did not trust banks, and history proved them right. Number 14 on this list was so clever that thieves stood in the same room as the money and never found it. And number 3 has cost treasure hunters decades of digging with nothing to show for it. Hit that subscribe button, because these skills might matter again sooner than any of us think. Let us count down the 25 forgotten ways our grandparents hid food and valuables from looters and thieves. Number 25. The decoy cash box. The smartest thing your grandfather ever did was let himself get robbed a little. He kept a small tin box in the top dresser drawer, right where any thief would look first, and inside it sat maybe $8 or $9 in loose bills and a cheap pocket watch. That was the sacrifice. A burglar who found it, grabbed it, felt the thrill of the score, and left satisfied, never tearing the house apart looking for more. Because the real money, the $60 or $70 that meant survival through winter, was somewhere else entirely. The genius was in the psychology. A house with nothing to steal gets searched hardest. A house that gives up an easy prize gets left alone. Your grandmother called it feeding the wolf, so it did not eat the flock. It cost a few dollars a year in bait and saved everything that mattered. A thief who thinks he has won stops hunting. Number 24. False bottom flour and sugar bins. Every farm kitchen had those big enamel canisters marked flour, sugar, coffee, lined up on the counter, and nobody, not a thief, not a neighbor, not a tax man, ever thought twice about them. That was the point. Your grandmother would fit a shallow tin disc down inside the flour bin, resting a few inches above the bottom, then fill the space beneath it with rolled bills or a folded deed wrapped in oilcloth. On top of that false floor went the actual flour, 6 or 8 inches of it, white and ordinary. A thief who dumped the canister looking for cash would see flour spill out and move on. The weight felt right. The flour was real. No one sifts a whole bin of flour in a house they are burgling in the dark. A canister cost about $0.25, and the tin disc was cut from an old pie pan. Simple, invisible, and sitting in plain sight the entire time. Number 23. The hollowed-out book. Long before spy movies made it a cliché, your great-grandmother was already doing it. She would take a thick, dull, respectable book, an old encyclopedia volume, or a set of sermons nobody would ever open, and carefully carve out the center of the pages with a razor, leaving a hollow well inside. Into that space went cash, a wedding ring, a folded insurance policy. Then the book went back on the shelf between 40 others exactly like it. The brilliance was camouflaged by boredom. A thief scanning a bookshelf sees clutter, not treasure. He is not going to pull down and shake every volume in the house. He wants jewelry boxes and cash drawers. A book about crop rotation from 1911 is neither. Some families kept the hollow book right on the parlor table in the open. The safest place, they knew, was the place too obvious to suspect. Number 22. Money sewn into the hems and linings of coats. During the hard years, your grandparents wore their savings. A woman would unpick the hem of a heavy winter coat, slide folded bills or gold coins along the fold, and stitch it closed so cleanly you could not tell it had ever been opened. Coins went into the shoulder padding of a man's Sunday jacket. Bills were flattened into the lining of a hatband. The logic was ironclad. Thieves ransack houses, but they rarely go through the closet coat by coat, feeling every seam. And if the family had to flee a fire, a flood, or an eviction, the money left with them, worn right on their bodies, impossible to steal without stripping them bare. Immigrant families crossing into this country did the same, sewing everything they owned into their clothing because it was the only luggage no one could confiscate. A spool of thread cost a penny. The security it bought was worth a fortune. Number 21. Curtain rods and hollow bed frames. Look up in any old farmhouse and you were looking at a bank vault. Those iron and brass curtain rods running above every window were hollow tubes, and your grandmother knew it. She would roll tightly folded bills into a thin cylinder, slide them up inside the rod, and cap the end. The rolled money vanished into a fixture. A thief walks past a dozen times without a glance. The iron bed frames worked the same way. The post and rails were hollow pipe, and the decorative brass knobs at the corners screwed off. Unscrew the knob, drop a roll of bills or a folded deed down the pipe, screw it back on, and the whole thing looked exactly like every other bed in America. A burglar flips the mattress and checks under the bed. He does not disassemble the frame. Your grandparents slept on top of their savings every single night and never lost a wink of sleep over it. Number 20, the cookie jar decoy. Everybody knew Grandma kept money in the cookie jar. That was the whole trick. It was the most famous hiding spot in America, a joke, a cliché, the first place any grandchild or burglar would check. And that is precisely why the smart ones used it. Your grandmother kept a small amount in the cookie jar, $5 or $10 in change, and small bills, so that anyone who checked would find something and stop looking. The reputation of the cookie jar did the work. It absorbed the search. Meanwhile, the serious money, the roll that could not be lost, sat inside the hollow curtain rod or under the false floor of the flour bin. The cookie jar was a lightning rod, drawing every greedy hand straight to a spot she was willing to lose. Reverse psychology, cooked up by a woman in an apron who never took a class in her life. She just understood that the loudest secret is the safest one. First pattern break. Here is where you have to understand what these people had lived through. Between 1930 and 1933, more than 9,000 banks in America failed, locked their doors one morning with people's entire life savings sealed inside, and those people never saw a penny of it again. There was no deposit insurance yet. When your bank closed, your money was simply gone, as if it had never existed. So a whole generation learned a lesson so deep, it never left them. They hid their money in the walls and the ground and the seams of their clothes because they had watched neighbors lose everything to an institution that promised safety and delivered ruin. This was not paranoia. This was memory. And if you ever wondered why your grandmother kept cash in a coffee can when she had a perfectly good bank account, now you know. She was not being foolish. She was being a survivor. Number 19. The coffee can buried in the garden. This is the one nearly every family did. An empty coffee can, the big metal kind with the plastic lid, became the safe deposit box of rural America. Your grandfather rolled his bills, wrapped them in wax paper or oilcloth against the damp, sealed them in the can, and buried it 18 inches down somewhere only he knew. The garden was perfect. Freshly turned soil is normal in a garden. Nobody questions a man digging among his tomato plants. He marked it in his memory against a fence post or the third row from the pump, and there it stayed, immune to house fires and burglars alike. The problem, and it was a real one, is that a buried can only works if someone remembers where it is. To this day, old properties across the Midwest give up rusted coffee cans full of rotted Depression-era bills found by accident, buried by men who died before they could dig them up. Number 18, the spring house and the well. Before refrigeration, keeping food cold was a matter of survival, and hiding it was a bonus that came built in. Your great-grandparents built a spring house over a cold running spring, a little stone structure where the water kept milk, butter, and meat cool through the hottest summer. But it did double duty. Crocks of preserved food, sometimes jars of coins, sat submerged in the cold water, where a passing thief would never think to reach into the muck and feel around. The well worked even better. Families lowered sealed jars of valuables on a string, hanging them just below the water line, where no one looking down the shaft would ever spot them. Cold, dark, and utterly ordinary. A looter ransacks the house and the barn. He does not climb down into the well or wade through the springhouse trough. Your grandparents hid their treasure in the one place too wet and too cold to bother with. Number 17, the smokehouse rafters. A cured ham was money on the frontier. It represented a slaughtered hog, days of smoking, and it could feed a family through the deepest part of winter. So people hid their hams the way we would hide gold. The smokehouse was full of hanging meat, but the best pieces, the ones a family could not afford to lose to a raider, went up into the dark rafters, wrapped in cloth sacks, tucked against the ceiling where the smoke was thickest and the shadows deepest. A thief who kicked open the smokehouse door in the dark, grabbed what hung at eye level, and ran. He did not stand there and look up into the black rafters counting hams. Others buried salted meat in bins of ashes inside the smokehouse, hidden in plain sight among the debris. When your survival hangs on a single ham, you learn to make it disappear. Number 16, root cellar trap doors under the rug. Every serious homestead had a root cellar where potatoes, onions, apples, and cured meat kept for months. But the smart families had too. There was the obvious cellar, the one with the outside door that everybody knew about, stocked with enough to look normal. And then there was the hidden one, its entrance a trapdoor cut into the kitchen floor covered by a rug and a table set squarely on top. When looters came through, and in hard times they did, whole gangs moving farm to farm, they cleaned out the visible cellar and left believing they had taken everything. Beneath the kitchen rug, sealed under the family's own feet, sat the real winter stores. Getting the temperature and ventilation right on a hidden cellar took real skill, but a family that got it right could be robbed clean and still eat until spring. Number 15, the mattress and the quilt. Money in the mattress became a punchline, but there was hard sense underneath the joke. Your grandmother would open a seam in the mattress ticking, slide flat bills or documents deep into the batting, and sew it shut. And the money vanished into a lump no one could feel without slicing the whole thing open. The quilts were even cleverer. When a woman pieced a quilt, she could sew flat coins or folded bills right into the batting between the layers, quilting the stitches tight around them so they never shifted or clinked. That quilt then sat folded at the foot of the bed, a homely, worthless-looking thing a burglar would step over on his way to the jewelry box. A family could carry its entire fortune out of a burning house as a single blanket over one arm. The most valuable object in the house looked exactly like the least valuable one. Number 14, the canning jar that was not food. This is the one where thieves stood in the same room as the money and never found it. Your grandmother's pantry held dozens, sometimes hundreds, of mason jars, all sealed, all lined up on shelves, all looking like preserved beans and tomatoes and peaches. And somewhere in that wall of identical jars sat a few that held no food at all. She would fill a jar with rolled bills or jewelry, then top it off to mimic its neighbors, packing dried beans on top or sealing it under a false layer of preserves and set it back in the middle of the row. A looter grabbing food off a pantry shelf sees 100 jars of vegetables. He is not opening and inspecting every single one. The money sat behind glass, labeled string beans in your grandmother's own hand, hidden by the sheer boredom of a pantry that looked exactly like every other pantry in the county. Second pattern break. There is something worth sitting with here. And it is not really about hiding places at all. It is about a way of thinking we have completely lost. Your grandparents assumed in their bones that the systems around them could fail. The bank could close. A gang of desperate men could come up the road in the night. They did not organize their lives around the assumption that everything would keep working, because they had watched everything stop working. And so they built redundancy into everything: money in the bank and money in the wall, food in the pantry and food under the floor, a little to lose and a lot to keep. We call it paranoia now, but they would have called it prudence, and they would have looked at a modern family with everything in one checking account and no food past Thursday, and thought we had lost our minds. Trust nothing completely. Keep something back. Always have a second cellar. Number 13. Hollow furniture legs and false drawer bottoms. A good piece of furniture was a safe that nobody recognized as a safe. Cabinet makers in the old days built hidden compartments as a matter of course, and your grandparents used every one of them. The turned legs of a heavy table could be hollowed out and capped, holding a roll of bills inside a piece of furniture far too heavy to haul off or take apart. Dressers and desks were built with false bottom drawers. A thin panel fitted an inch above the real bottom, creating a shallow secret space where deeds, cash, and jewelry lay flat and invisible. You pulled the drawer all the way out, and it looked empty. A burglar rifles through drawers, looking for what is in them. He does not measure each drawer against the outside of the dresser to find the missing inch. The hiding place was engineered right into the thing the thief was already searching, and he searched right past it. Number 12. The loose brick in the chimney. Every old house had one, and only the family knew which one. Somewhere in the brickwork of the hearth or the chimney breast, a single brick sat loose, mortared only at the face, so it looked identical to the hundreds around it. Behind it, your grandfather had chipped out a hollow in the masonry, a little vault built into the very structure of the house. Cash, coins, a pocket watch, a folded bond, all of it slid into the wall and sealed behind a brick that a stranger could stare at for an hour and never pick out from its neighbors. The fireplace was perfect for another reason, too. It was warm and dry, so paper money did not rot the way it did in a buried can. A thief tears apart the bedroom and the kitchen. He does not go tapping every brick in the chimney, listening for the hollow one. Your grandmother knew which brick it was the way she knew her own children's names. Number 11. Under the floorboards. The oldest trick in the book and one of the best. In houses with plank floors, a single board could be cut, fitted, and left unnailed, lifting free to reveal the dark space between the joists below. Your grandparents dropped their valuables down into that gap, rapped against dust, and set the board back down, sometimes sliding a rug or a piece of furniture over the top for good measure. The board that lifted was chosen carefully, often in a closet or under a bed, somewhere a footstep would never draw attention. A whole family could walk over the loose board 1,000 times a year and never think about the fortune resting 8 inches beneath their heels. And a looter tearing the place apart is checking cupboards and drawers and mattresses. He is not on his hands and knees testing every floorboard for the one that comes up free. Old homes still surprise their new owners with what turns up under the boards. Third pattern break. Here is the sad and strange truth about all of this. A great many of these hiding places work too well. They outlive the people who made them. Somewhere in this country right now there is money in a wall, a jar in the ground, a roll of bills up inside a curtain rod, waiting for a person who is 50 years dead. The secret died with the one who kept it. That coffee can only work if you dig it up, and thousands never got dug up because the man who buried it had a heart attack in the field or a stroke in his sleep, and he was the only one who knew. Demolition crews and new homeowners find these caches by pure accident decades later, long after they could do anyone any good. The very thing that made these hiding places safe The fact that only one person knew is the thing that lost them forever. Tell someone that was the lesson they learned too late. Number 10. Behind the wallpaper and inside the walls. The walls of an old house were full of empty space, and your grandparents knew how to use it. Flat items, paper money, deeds, war bonds could be slipped behind the wallpaper itself, pressed against the plaster, and papered over so smoothly the wall looked untouched. For larger stashes, a small section of plaster could be opened, the valuables tucked into the hollow between the studs, and the whole patched and painted to blend in. There is a famous kind of story, repeated in 100 versions, of a family renovating an old house and finding cash sealed inside a wall by an owner who took the secret to the grave. The wall is the ultimate hiding place because it is the one part of the house nobody thinks of as storage. It is just the wall. A burglar does not tear open the plaster. He does not even see it. Your grandparents hid their savings inside the bones of the house itself. Number 9. The family Bible. The Bible sat on its own table in the parlor, the biggest, heaviest, most respected book in the house, and no thief in his right mind was going to grab the family Bible on his way out the door. Its worthlessness to a burglar was exactly its value to your grandmother. The largest ones had space in the binding, and some families hollowed a compartment right into the thick pages, tucking cash, documents, and keepsakes inside. Even without a carved-out hollow, flat bills pressed between the pages of a book no stranger would ever open were as safe as they could be. There was a second layer of protection, too, an unspoken one. Even a hardened man hesitated to disturb a family Bible. It carried a weight beyond money, so it sat there in the open, holding the deed to the farm and $100 in 20s, protected by nothing but the fact that no one would dare. Number 8. The chicken coop. Nobody wants to search a chicken coop. It is filthy. It stinks. The birds peck and flap and raise a racket, and there is manure and feathers over every surface. That is exactly why your grandparents used it. A sealed jar buried in the dirt floor beneath the roost, under a layer of droppings no thief would ever dig through by choice, was about as safe as money could get. The hens themselves were an alarm system, kicking up a screaming commotion the moment a stranger came near in the night. And the whole environment repelled a casual search. A looter goes through the house and the barn. He is not getting down in the muck of the coop to sift through the filth on the off chance something is buried there. The nastiest, least valuable-looking corner of the property guarded the family savings, defended by a dozen angry hens and a smell that turned everyone away. Number 7. Hollow broom and mop handles. Lean a broom in the corner and it becomes furniture. Nobody sees it. Your grandmother saw a hollow tube. The wooden and later metal handles of brooms and mops were often hollow, and a tight roll of bills slid up inside one, capped at the end, disappeared completely into an object so ordinary it stood in the corner of every room in the house. A thief walks past the broom closet a dozen times. He never once picks up the broom, unscrews the cap, and shakes it out. Why would he? It is a broom. The principle was always the same, and it was the principle behind half of this list. Hide the valuable thing inside a worthless thing so common the eye slides right over it. The best safe in the house was leaning in the corner where anyone could grab it, and no one ever did. Number 6. The outhouse. This one takes a strong stomach, and that is the entire point. Before indoor plumbing, every home had an outhouse out back, and it was the one structure on the property that no thief, no looter, no tax collector was ever going to search with any enthusiasm. Families hid sealed containers in the walls of the outhouse, tucked up under the seat bench, or buried nearby, protected by the simple fact that nobody wanted to spend 1 second longer in there than they had to, let alone go feeling around in the dark for hidden money. It was the decoy of decoys, guarded by disgust, on the correct bet that human revulsion is a better lock than any iron key. Your grandparents understood that a thief has standards too, and there were places even a desperate man would not put his hands. They put the money there. Number 5, the coal bin and the ash pile. In the winter months, the coal bin in the cellar was full of black coal, filthy and heavy, shoveled in and shoveled out, and it was the last place anyone would go rooting for treasure. Your grandfather sealed valuables in a metal box or a jar and buried it down in the coal, where it sat black and invisible among the lumps. In summer, when the coal was gone, the trick moved to the ash pile out back, a heap of gray fireplace ashes nobody would ever dig through by choice. A container hidden in the ashes was protected by pure unpleasantness, the same principle as the outhouse and the coop. This was a running theme in how these people thought. The safest hiding place is not the most clever one, it is the most miserable one, the one that makes a searcher wrinkle his nose and move along. Dirt, ash, coal, and manure guarded more Depression-era savings than any bank vault in the country. Fourth pattern break. Notice the pattern running through nearly all of these, because it is the real lesson, worth more than any single hiding spot. Your grandparents almost never relied on making something hard to reach. They relied on making it not worth reaching for. The false bottom flour bin, the jar that says string beans, the broom in the corner, the family Bible, the coal, the outhouse, the chicken coop. Over and over they hid valuable things inside, worthless, boring, or downright disgusting things, because they understood something about thieves we have forgotten. A thief is working fast, in fear, with limited time, hunting for obvious targets. He is not going to methodically dismantle a home. He is going to grab what looks like money and run. So the way you beat him is not a stronger lock. It is camouflage. It is boredom. It is making your fortune look like the least interesting object in the room. Number 4, the hidden pantry behind a false wall. The families with the most to protect and the skill to do it built entire rooms that did not officially exist. A pantry or a section of the cellar would be walled off behind a false partition, its entrance disguised as a shelf that swung out, or a section of paneling indistinguishable from the rest. Behind it sat the deep stores, the canned goods and cured meat and sacks of flour that could feed a family for months, along with whatever valuables needed the same protection. When looters came through, they emptied the visible pantry, counted the house as picked clean, and left. The hidden room sat sealed behind a wall they never knew was hollow. This took a carpenter's eye and real work to build, but for a family that had lived through a raid or feared one coming, it was worth every hour. You cannot steal what you cannot find, and you cannot find a room you do not know is there. Number 3, the buried cache and the landmark map. This is the one that has cost treasure hunters decades of digging. When your grandparents buried something serious, a real cache of coins meant to last. They did not just dig a hole and hope to remember. They triangulated it. So many paces from the corner of the barn, so many from the old oak, buried where 2 lines crossed. Some drew crude maps and hid them. Some memorized landmarks. Some carved tiny marks into fence posts or trees that meant nothing to anyone but them. The method was nearly foolproof against thieves who had no map, no landmarks, and no idea anything was there at all. But it had the same fatal flaw as the coffee can. The barn burned down. The oak was cut. The man who paced it off died with the numbers in his head. And so the country is dotted with buried caches, precisely mapped to landmarks that no longer exist, waiting under farmland for someone who will almost certainly never come. Number 2, money in the mattress ticking done right. We laughed at the mattress, but the people who did it properly were not fools. They were the last line of a whole system. The mattress was not where you kept everything. It was where you kept the go money, the cash you needed to be able to grab in 10 seconds flat if the house caught fire, or the sheriff came to evict you, or you simply had to run. Buried jars are safe but slow. A wall is safe but sealed. The mattress was instant. Your grandmother worked the bills deep into the batting where no casual hand would feel them and close the seam. And that money was both hidden and reachable at a moment's notice. It was the emergency fund of a generation that had learned emergencies come without warning. Slow money in the ground, medium money in the walls, and fast money in the mattress. 3 speeds of savings, layered by how quickly you might need to run. That was not paranoia. That was a plan. Number 1, the buried mason jar in the yard. At the top of the list is the method so common, so universal, so woven into the story of hard times America that nearly every family did some version of it. The mason jar buried in the yard. It cost almost nothing. A jar you already owned and a shovel. It survived everything a house could not: fire, flood, burglary, foreclosure. A thief could take the whole house apart and never touch the money because the money was not in the house. It was 3 feet down beneath the 3rd fence post from the gate, sealed in glass against the damp, holding rolled bills or silver coins or a wedding ring wrapped in cloth. This was the true safe box of a generation that had watched the banks fail and decided the earth was more trustworthy than any institution. It asked for nothing and it protected everything, and it carried, buried right alongside the money, the one great weakness that runs through this whole list. The reason so many of these jars are still down there today. It only ever worked if someone remembered where. So here is the challenge. This week, ask the oldest person in your family where they think their parents hid things and whether anyone ever found it all. You might be surprised what they still remember. Drop the method you would actually use in the comments and tell me which one your family did, because somewhere out there, a jar is still waiting.